is a special time. You know, we've been talking about this in the sense of the son of the commandment. That's what bar mitzvah means. We've talked about, even recently, we've talked about going through the mikveh, you know, the being immersed in waters, what most of us grew up calling baptism. You know, we looked at as how that's not really just a one-time event like we've always been used to, that the Jewish people would go through and immerse for multiple reasons, including those kind of life transitions like a bar mitzvah. That's one of those kind of moments where you're transitioning from being a child to an adult. You know, so you can't necessarily get to do all the things that you did before as a child. And maybe we should start requiring, you know, you have to bring a notebook and start taking notes on everything, right? How about that? No, not so much. Yeah. Well, see, and as we were reading about what Tommy shared, you know, apparently before this age, you know, the father legally could be held responsible for his son's behavior, and how great a relief it must be, you know, to be off the hook right now. That's kind of what that was described as. When you read some of the rabbis and how they got to that tradition, that understanding of things, some of them, like Rabbi Levi, moved it back to the twin boys of Jacob and Esau. And they put it like this. He says, when they grew and blossomed, this one produced its fragrance, and that one produced its thorns. So again, that contrast of a life of faith versus a life of ungodliness. So all 13 years, both of them would go to the school, and both of them would come from school. After 13 years, this one would go to the study halls, and that one would go to the houses of idol worship. Again, contrasting Jacob and Esau. And this is what Rabbi Elazar said: a person must be responsible for his son until age 13, and from there on he must say, blessed that he has absolved me from the punishment of this one. Again, that's that idea that, you know, he's grown up now. He has to start taking some responsibility for himself. You know, a growing boy becomes responsible for his own moral choices. It's a way to help him grow up and transition into being an adult before he actually has to go out there and do it all on his own, right? Most cultures don't kick them out at 13, right? No. So they're learning what it is to be an adult, a man, before he actually has to do it, before he has to have his own house or have his own wife. So he starts going with his father and other adult men and participating in things that previously he may not have been allowed to do and join in. It marks a time of training from other men so that this boy will begin to see himself, you know, as a man and a future husband and a future provider. You know, he's not ready for that yet, but he's getting to learn what that's all about. He's moving in that direction, and it's something that our culture is greatly lacking in that sense. You know, we have no clear transition and push to adulthood, no coming of age, real significance in our culture at all. I mean, the best we have are like getting a driver's license at 16, right? Voting and selective service at 18, getting to drink alcohol at 21. I mean, those are not exactly great markers of life. There's no clear recognition or ceremony or mentorship really in our culture that's built in for a boy to become a man. And so this contributes to why we have, you know, 25, 30-year-old boys, right, who refuse to grow up and take responsibility for ourselves. Our culture has made it hard. And so that's why things like the bar mitzvah is so important. It's more than just a tradition or a ceremony. It's an intentional step in a young man's journey with God, something he can remember and look back on. You know, this ceremony was only formally described and talked about in the Mishnah in the 1200s. Girls have had a bat mitzvah, from the Reformed tradition, but that didn't really start until like the 1800s or in 1900s. The first bat mitzvah, the daughter of the commandment, didn't occur in the United States until 1922. But just because, when you think about in the Mishnah in the 1200s, just because it wasn't described until the 1200s doesn't mean that it wasn't already practiced in some form well before that time. There are some references that try to tie it all the way back to Genesis 21 when Isaac is talked about being weaned, as if that was a reference to him no longer as a boy but now a man. I'm convinced more and more that one of the earliest descriptions of at least the lead up to a precursor to a full-fledged bar mitzvah is in the New Testament. When you look at what happens in Luke chapter 2, it says Yeshua's parents were going every year to Jerusalem for the Passover feast, like they're supposed to. And it says when he became 12 years old, they were going up according to the festival custom. Now, a bar mitzvah happens at what age? At 13. As it says, as they headed home after completing the days, the boy Yeshua remained in Jerusalem, but his parents did not know. And it says, supposing he was in the caravan, they went a day's journey. They began looking for him among his relatives and friends, and when they did not find him, they returned to Jerusalem to search for him. And after 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting in the center of the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. Now, how do you think that this situation kind of worked up at the temple? I checked with one of our Dollywood representatives here just a little while ago. If you have amusement parks like Dollywood, like Disneyland and stuff, they have special training on what to watch for when children get separated from their parents. They have certain protocols in place if you find one, because at the, do you think that Yeshua was the first kid to get separated from his parents at the temple with all that hustle and bustle going on? No. Others kids would have gotten lost, would start wandering around, panicking, even crying because they can't find them anymore. And parents would come rushing back in, trying to say, where'd they go? So I fully believe some Levites, some priests, some other, servants and attendees at the temple, they probably found some kids all the time. And how do you think that went when they found Yeshua? What do you think their conversation started out with? What's the first question you would ask somebody that looks like they're lost? Hey kid, where are your parents? Oh, they'll be back soon, right? Well, where are you from? And the answer is, I'm from Nazareth in Galilee, right? And it's like, oh, really? Well, now I highly doubt that Yeshua looked like a rich kid from a sophisticated family. He probably looked like a small town country kid, and telling him that he was from Nazareth just confirmed that, right? So the many of those in the temple would probably consider him one of the common folk, one of those ignorant masses who can probably barely read the Torah. So it would be fitting for the temple leader to ask himself, what's the typical question when somebody finds out they're from Nazareth? Can anything good come from there, right? So where are your parents? Where are you from? And then the next question was, how old are you, right? And so he would say, I'm 12. We get that information. And so I'm sure this leader in the temple would say, well, surely you're preparing for your bar mitzvah. I mean, you're ready to take your place and responsibilities to God's commandments, to our God's commandments, right? Aren't you ready? What would Yeshua say? Oh, yeah, I'm ready. Now, most adults, when they hear a kid say, oh, yeah, I'm ready, I'll bet, yeah, right, we'll see about that. How ready really is this kid? Well, why don't you come sit with me until your parents return? Let me ask you some questions. Maybe I can help you, get ready on your journey to becoming a son of the commandments. Now, on a scale of 1 to 10, how high would his expectations be for this country boy from Nazareth? Anybody have an idea? They probably, maybe 5, 6, maybe. He probably wouldn't have high expectations. But Yeshua went with him, and sat down and started listening, started answering some of those questions, and then started asking some of his own. Now that kind of changed things a little bit. It says all those hearing him were astonished at his understanding and his answers. Was he ready for his bar mitzvah? Oh yeah. It says when his parents came back, because they came back just like I'm sure he thought they would, they saw Yeshua, they were overwhelmed, and his mother said to him, "Child," right? So she's still calling him a child. He's not ready to be an adult yet. "Why did you do this to us? Look, your father and I were searching for you frantically." And he said to them, "Why were you searching for me? Didn't you know that I must be about the things of my Father?" This whole situation is very interesting. I mean, when it talks about them being astonished at his understanding and his answers, that's talking about them being amazed. That's talking about them being impressed, even thrown off balance by how sharp he was. You know, the crowd of teachers and people in the temple, do you think it got smaller, or do you think it started collecting a few more? Probably more and more started coming to hear, who's this kid? Where'd he come from? But notice, even at age 12, Yeshua knows who he is. He knows he is the Son sent to do the same works that he sees his Father's doing. He's in his Father's house. And, you know, sometimes we struggle with all that means. What all does that mean? But even his parents didn't fully grasp and understand what all that meant. It says, "Then he went down with them to Nazareth and was obedient to them, but his mother treasured all these words in her heart. And Yeshua kept increasing in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and men." Right? That last line sure sounds like Yeshua took his place as a son of the commandment, doing everything required to him of him as a Jewish young man to fulfill all righteousness, as he talks about later. He's gaining greater and greater respect and recognition as he grows up. And it got me thinking about that I wonder if those that found him in the temple, ever talked about that kid, that boy that was so sharp, that drew such a crowd, that they were astonished at his answers and understanding. I wonder if they ever wondered what happened to that kid. I wonder if they ever went looking for him, after he came of age. I wonder if some of the same men who found Yeshua that time remembered him years later when he rode in on the donkey. Would they recognize him? Would they even believe in him? Would they oppose him? It's not a really good idea to oppose the Son, because the Son has a special place and a special plan in the plan and purpose of God. That could even be seen in the Tanakh. When you see things like Proverbs chapter 30, verse 4, it says, "Who has gone up into heaven and come down? Who has gathered the wind in the palm of his hand? Who has wrapped the waters in a cloak? Who has established all the ends of the earth? What is his name, and what is the name of his Son? If you know." All of those descriptions of the wind, the waters, the ends of the earth, only Adonai is master and creator of those things. What is the name of his Son? And yet Yeshua, in John chapter 3, verse 13, he talks about no one has gone up into heaven except the one who did what? Who came down from heaven. And he says that's the Son of Man. The Son of Man is not a statement just about humanity. It's more than just a messianic title. It's from Daniel chapter 7, when the Son of Man comes with the clouds of heaven and approaches the Ancient of Days. That's the title that got him in so much trouble at his trial. The Son of Man in that passage is given dominion, glory, and sovereignty, and all the nations should serve and worship him. Those are descriptions of things said only of God. And it's said of the Son of Man. Psalm chapter 2, it says, I have set up my king upon Zion. You don't want to oppose the Son. I've set up my king upon Zion, my holy mountain, and I will declare the decree of Adonai. He said to me, you are my son. Today I have become your father. This is a passage that's quoted numerous times in the New Testament. It says, ask me, and I will give the nations as your inheritance, and the far reaches of the earth as your possession. And again, as all the earth is Adonai's. But again, you don't want to oppose him. You don't want to rebel against him, because this is what the Son does. You shall break the nations with an iron scepter. You shall dash them into pieces like a potter's jar. So now, O kings, be wise and take warning, O judges of the earth. Serve Adonai with fear and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, lest he become angry, and you perish along your way, since his wrath may flare up suddenly, and happy is everyone taking refuge in him. Those are some significant passages. The Son is the one that is that instrument of if you serve Adonai with that fear and rejoice with trembling, it's how you relate to the Son depends on what kind of treatment you receive. You've heard me talk about another title or Jewish concept from the first century era. When we look at the Aramaic Targums, this is a translation in the Aramaic language that were considered authoritative translations in the first and the century before, the century after Yeshua. And that's the idea of the Memra. Y'all have heard me talk about that. The Memra, which is translated as the Word. The Memra is what is invoked in these translations when the invisible, spiritual, heavenly Creator wants to act or be seen here on earth. The Memra, isn't exactly the same as Adonai. There's some distinction, but the Memra is still considered to be Adonai. He's the visible of the invisible God. He's the radiance of his glory. He's the imprint of his being, as Hebrews 1 talks about. And the Memra was actively involved in the creative act. And again, this is Jewish thought and understanding from the first centuries around Yeshua, and it's considered authoritative by the rabbis. This is one of them. See if this seems familiar. This is from Targum Neophiti. This is one of the collections of this Aramaic. He says, from the beginning and with wisdom, the Memra, the word of the Lord, created and perfected the heavens and the earth. It says, and the earth was waste and unformed, desolate of man and beast, empty of plant cultivation and trees, and darkness was spread over the face of the abyss, and a spirit of mercy from before the Lord was blowing over the surface of the waters. Sometimes I'll add a little additional concepts and ideas or commentary, and sometimes that's good, sometimes that's not always good, but notice it's the Memra that created and perfected these things. Notice next that it's the Memra who speaks, and it's the Memra who separates even. It says, and the Memra of the Lord, the word of the Lord said, let there be light. And there was light according to the decree of his word, of his Memra. And it was manifest before the Lord that the light was good. And the Memra of the Lord separated the light from the darkness. And the Memra of the Lord called the light. So he takes authority over it and names it. The Memra called the light daytime, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening and there was morning, in the order of the work of creation, first day. So this whole thing is what John is drawing from when he wrote John 1:1, where he says, in the beginning was the Word. In the beginning was the Memra, right? And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Targum goes even further when it comes to the Memra and humanity. You get down to chapter 1, verse 27. It says, and the Memra of the Lord, the word of the Lord created man in his own likeness. In a likeness from before the Lord he created him. Male and his partner he created them. It says, and the glory of the Lord blessed them. Right? So humanity is created in the likeness or the form of the Memra. And so the Memra has these traits and these characteristics that he shares with humanity. But he's also has to have some characteristics and traits as Elohim, since the Jewish translators are comfortable interchanging those from the Hebrew and the Aramaic. And the glory of the Lord blessed him. The glory and the Memra are essentially synonymous, because it's the glory that blesses, but it's the Memra that speaks the blessing. The Memra of the Lord, so the glory of the Lord blessed them, and the Memra of the Lord said, he's speaking, be strong and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fishes of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over every wild beast that creeps upon the earth. The greater is certainly blessed by the lesser. We'll also show you in chapter 2 the Memra's relationship to the Shabbat. And this is all with the same idea. And they completed, which I thought was interesting, the creation of the heavens and the earth and all their hosts. And on the seventh day, the Memra of the Lord completed his work, which he had created. And there was Sabbath and repose before him on the seventh day from all his work which he created. And the glory of the Lord blessed the seventh day and hallowed it, because on it there was a great Sabbath and repose before him from all his work which the glory of the Lord had done in creation. It's almost as if the Memra, is almost as if the Word, the radiance of his glory, the Son of Man is Lord of the Shabbat. The Memra is even, the Word is even what Abraham was looking forward to in seeing, as Yeshua talked about in John chapter 8, that Abraham looked forward to seeing my day, that he saw it and was glad. It's like this is the Memra. The Word is what Abraham was looking forward to and seeing, because for Abraham, believing in the Memra, believing in the Word, believing in Messiah, and believing in Adonai is the same. And this is, again, Jewish thought from the first century. We know this passage, Genesis 15:6, where it says, Abraham believed in the Lord, and what happened? And it was credited to him as righteousness. He believed in Adonai. He believed in the Lord. This is how this one reads. And he, Abraham, believed in the Lord and had faith in the Memra, had faith in the word of the Lord. And he reckoned it to him for righteousness, because he parlayed not before him with words. He wasn't interested in bargaining or trying to get a better deal or anything else like that. But believing in the Lord and having faith in the Memra, are they something different, or are they the same? They're the same. He believed in Adonai, and it was credited to him as righteousness. He believed in the Memra, and it's credited to him as righteousness. Abraham looked forward to seeing Messiah's day. He saw it. He saw that future of the Word and was glad. See, the Memra is even the one representing God, standing in his place at the establishment of the covenant in Genesis 17. He says, I have established my covenant between my word, the Memra, and thee, and thy sons after thee in their generations, for an everlasting covenant, to be a God to thee and to thy sons after thee. Again, it reads a little bit different because this is an Aramaic translation, a different language, and it has a little extra commentary from time to time. But the covenant is established between my Memra and thee. The Memra was even essential in redemption from Egypt, which pictures all of our redemption of the Lamb that was slain. In Exodus 12, he says, you shall say, it is a sacrifice of mercy before the Lord, who had mercy in his word upon the houses of the sons of Israel in Egypt, in Mitzrayim, when he destroyed the Mitzrayim and spared our houses. And when the house of Israel heard this word from the mouth of Moshe, they bowed and worshiped. And just like you want to, as Psalm 2 said, you want to kiss the Son lest he be angry. You don't want to oppose the Son. You don't want to oppose the Memra. The Memra is to be obeyed, as seen in a passage from Isaiah that's quoted several times in the New Testament. Isaiah chapter 8 says, "The Lord of hosts, him shall ye call holy, and let him be your fear, and let him be your strength. And if you will not obey his word, his Memra shall be amongst you for revenge, and for a stone of stumbling, and for a rock of offense to both of the houses of the princes of Israel, for destruction and for a snare, because they contend against those of the house of Judah who are dwelling in Jerusalem." And so if you obey God, the Lord of hosts, you obey the Memra. If you love Messiah Yeshua, what does he say? If you love me, you will do what? You will keep my commands. And his commandments are the same as the Father's. And so to not obey the Memra, to not obey the Son, is to not obey who? The Father. And I could keep going like this all day, right? Through the Torah, through the Aramaic Targums and things, through the prophets and through the Psalms, to show this idea over and over about the Word, this Jewish understanding of his involvement in creation, his faith in him, covenant and redemption. That's an essential part of understanding this passage of "in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God." He was with God in the beginning, and all things were made through him, and apart from him nothing was made that has come into being. And in him was life, and the life was the light of men. You know, when Messiah, when the Memra, when the Word becomes flesh and tabernacles among us, we can say that it is Emmanuel, which means what? God with us. We can say that because of this foundation of Jewish thought that's been there from the beginning, from that whole first century era, from you can see it in the Aramaic. When the Messiah tabernacles among us, it is God who is with us. And it reminds me of an article that I found recently called from a book, or it's about a book called "Putting Jesus." It's from a traditional church background, "Putting Jesus in His Place" by a man named Rob Bowman, and he uses an acronym that y'all should remember. It's using the acronym of HANDS. Everybody should have at least one, or should, right? Ideally, at least one, maybe two. But the first one, H, stands for Messiah, Yeshua. He is given the honors that are due only to God. The A stands for the attributes. Messiah Yeshua shares attributes that are shared with God. That fullness of in bodily form, fullness of deity in bodily form. He's involved in creation. He makes covenant with his people. So he has the honors, he has the attributes, he has the names that are used of God. Like Lord, like first and last, like Alpha and Omega, like King of Kings, the name above all names. Those are all things said of God. And Messiah shares them. And then the deeds that only God can do. Y'all remember that one question came up. Who can forgive sins but God alone? And Yeshua does that. He raises the dead. All judgment is given over to the Son. And then the last one is the seat, the share that he shares with God. He is there in the midst of the throne in Revelation. He is exalted at the right hand. He is high and exalted. All of those things that he shares So when you consider the connection between Yeshua and God, between the Memra and the Creator, what the Scripture says about the Son, how we are to kiss the Son, the Anointed One, that we want to support and be on the Son's side lest he be angry and we perish along the way, that actually connects to the Torah portion real quickly. And Korah's rebellion that you were talking about. Because Korah was rebelling against more than just Moses. In the Targum Jonathan, which is the one I go to most of the time, it says, "Therefore art thou and all the company of thy helpers," talking about Korah, "gathered together against" who? Against the word, against the Memra of the Lord, and Aaron. What is he that you murmur against him? He's not only just rebelling against Moses and Aaron, he's rebelling against the word, against the Memra. And just like it is to rebel against Moses, if you rebel against Moses, who are you really rebelling against? You're rebelling against Adonai. So rebelling and rejecting the Memra, the word, is also to rebel against Adonai and his established order. Verse 26, Moses said to the congregation, "Remove now away from the tents of these men of sin, who have been worthy of death from the days of their youth." This is where you learn a little bit more of how the Jewish people understood it. From the days of their youth in Mitzrayim, for they betrayed my secret when I slew the Egyptian. So these men are the ones that tried to turn him in, is what the belief was. They provoked the Lord at the sea. At Alush, they profaned the Sabbath, and now they are gathered together against the Memra of the Lord, the word of the Lord. And therefore it is fit that their wealth should be scattered abroad and destroyed. Touch not then anything that is theirs, nor be smitten on account of their sins. Korah opposed the word, the Memra of Adonai. He stood against the Son. He stood against Messiah. And how well did it go for him? Did it go well? Or did something so unusual happen that the earth swallowed up Korah and his followers alive into Sheol? And when the people grumbled against Moses and they brought their staffs from each tribe, guess before whom they were placed? Number 17 says, "And thou shalt lay them up in the tabernacle before the testimony, where my word, where my Memra is appointed to meet you." It's the Memra who makes that staff bud and bear fruit, as if he is grafting, that cut off staff that he'd been using and walking around with for however long, this dead branch. It's as if he's grafting that dead branch back into the tree of life for all to see, so it can truly bear fruit. And so it is for all of us when Messiah grafts us into the olive tree of his promise. We kiss the Son, not in betrayal like Judas, nor in rebellion like Korah, but in faith and loyalty, as one would in taking an oath of loyalty to the King of Kings. That's what kiss the Son is really referring to. It's by faith in the Word, in the Messiah, that we take our place as a child of Abraham and graft it into the olive tree of his people, into the branch, so we can blossom, so we can bear fruit that will last. Most of us from a Gentile background, we were not a people, right? We were excluded from the nation, the covenants of promise, right? John says, "Whoever did receive him," this word says, "those trusting in his name, to these he gave the right to become children of God. They were not born of a bloodline, nor of human desire, nor of man's will, but of God." And so must we all, in coming to faith in Messiah, become a son or a daughter of the commandments. We all must take our obligation, our responsibility seriously to walk by faith in this way, in this instruction, in the Torah for the people of God. Because we have been added to this, not taking the place of this, but we have been included by faith. And so those commandments also become ours to obey. We come under His protection, His authority, and He is our King.